What's good, guys? In this video we'll be breaking down 3 different rotoscope effects. So here in After Effects, I'll be starting off with the first effect where we have the liquid explosion happening at the start of the clip. What we're going to do is add an effect called Displacer Pro, and if you don't have that, it's a free plugin. If you just search up Displacer Pro After Effects on Google, it should be like the first one that pops up, and it's a free plugin, so I highly recommend you guys download it. So once we add Displacer Pro, if we change around the settings or the translate X and the Y, as you guys can see, we get different looks. In our case, we're going to increase the scale. I'll increase that to 120, and then I'll play around with the anchor X as well as the anchor Y. I'll have the anchor X at 35%, and then I'll increase the anchor Y to 50%. For the edgy behavior, I'm also going to have that at mirror repeat. And now, as you guys can see, we have this really trippy effect going on with our footage. We're going to keyframe the scale at 120% at the start. Click U to reveal the keyframes, and then we're going to go forward 20 frames. So you want to hold the shift button and then click page down twice. We're going to then keyframe that scale back to 100%. Grab both of those keyframes, easy them. Go into the graph editor of the scale keyframes, and then for the influence, I'm going to have that at around 60% for both sides. We're going to have it go slightly slow in the beginning, and it gets faster and it goes out slow again. So if we play this, it animates kind of slow at the start and it gets faster in the middle, and then it animates out slow. We're going to then add an optics compensation. For the optics compensation, what we're going to do is increase the field of view to 150, and then make sure to click reverse lens distortion so that it covers the entire composition. Keyframe the field of view at 150 at the start, and then go forward 20 frames. Keyframe the field of view back to 0. Grab both of those keyframes, easy them. Go into the graph editor of these keyframes, and then create the same exact graph as before, where we have the influence at around 60%. Now if we play this, we have that warped effect at the start where our footage is stretched out and it fills out the entire composition. We're going to then add a turbulent displace. I'll change the displacement to turbulent smoother, and then for the complexity, increase that to 6. Now as you guys can see, it feels a lot more like a liquid effect. And then we're going to keyframe the amount at 50 at the start. Click that layer, click U to reveal the keyframes, and then go forward 20 frames. Keyframe the amount back to 0. Grab those keyframes, easy them. Go into the graph editor of those keyframes, create the same exact graph. Now if we play this, this is what we have so far. For the next effect, we're going to add a glow. Increase the glow threshold to 70, and then increase the glow radius to 60. We're also going to increase the glow intensity to 2, and then we're going to create a keyframe for the glow intensity at the start. Go forward 20 frames, and then keyframe the glow intensity back to 0. Grab both those keyframes, easy them, and then go into the graph editor, create the same exact graph. And the reason why we're doing this is because I want the animation of our effects to be consistent. So now when I play this, we have that glowing effect at the start for our liquid effect. And then for the final effect, we're going to add a CC radial blur just to add some motion blur to our effect. For the zoom, we're going to have that at brightest, and then for the amount, we're going to keyframe that at 100 at the start. Go forward 20 frames, and then keyframe the amount back to 0. Make sure to grab those keyframes, easy them. Go into the graph editor, make sure the influence is at 60%. Now when I play this, we have that motion blur effect going on at the start. I'm actually going to change the amount, and I'll just decrease that to 80. I think that looks a little better. Make sure it's keyframed at 80 at the start. Go forward 20 frames and keyframe it back to 0. And to make this look even better, I'm going to add a flash blur effect at the start. Create a new adjustment layer. Make that adjustment layer 6 frames long. For this adjustment layer, we're going to add a fastbox blur. I'll increase the blur radius to 7. Keyframe that at the start, and then go towards the end and keyframe it back to 0. Easy these keyframes. And we're also going to add a flash effect, so we'll be adding an exposure to this adjustment layer. Increase the exposure to 2, keyframe that, and also increase the offset to 0.2. Keyframe that at the start as well, and then go forward 6 frames. Keyframe the exposure as well as the offset back to 0. Grab all those keyframes, easy them. So now when I play this, we have that flash blur effect going on at the start. This is the final look for this effect. Now moving on to the second effect, we have this clip here of Camo from his music video. And to get started, what we're going to do is first rotoscope our subject. So double click that layer, grab the rotobrush tool, and then just mask out your subject. After rotoscoping your subject, you want to then click the freeze button to lock in your rotoscope. We're going to then go back into the composition. Now, as you guys can see, we have our rotoscope subject. I'm going to increase the feather to 8 and then decrease the shift edge to -32. Now, if we play this, we have smoother edges for our subject. We're going to then duplicate this layer, click Ctrl D, and then move this layer towards the bottom. I'll change that to Camo BG, which stands for background, and then delete the rotobrush effect for that layer. So now we have a rotoscoped layer at the top, and then at the bottom is our background layer. For the first effect, we're going to add a motion tile. Add this motion tile effect to our background layer. For this motion tile effect, we're going to increase the output width as well as the output height to 200. Click mirror edges. And for this effect, we're going to keyframe the tile center at the start, and we're going to want to create a background sliding effect in a cycle of 5 times. So we're going to have it slide from left to right in a cycle of 5 times, and in order to do that, you're going to want to multiply 960 times 5, which is 4800. So what we're going to do is click this layer, click U to reveal the keyframes, go forward 40 frames, and like I said before, we want the background slide effect to happen in a cycle of 5 times. So 960 times 5 is 4800. Grab both of those keyframes, ease them, go into the graph editor of these tile center keyframes. For the influence, I'll have that at around 50%, so it goes a little slow at the start and it gets faster when it's in the middle, and then it slows down towards the end. Make sure to turn on your motion blur. Now when I play this, we have that motion blur going on as the background sliding effect happens. For the next effect, we're going to add an optics compensation. Make sure to click the reverse lens distortion and go forward 8 frames. We're going to keyframe the field of view at 0 and then go forward 12 frames. Keyframe the field of view at 130. Go forward another 12 frames. Keyframe the field of view back to 0. Grab all those keyframes and ease them. And now when I play this, we have that distort effect going on in the middle. And then for the next effect, we're going to add a CC color offset. So as you guys can see, if we were to modify the red phase, green phase, as well as the blue phase, you get a bunch of different colors. In our case, we're going to keyframe the red phase at 0 at the start, but depending on your footage, you can go for whatever phase that you want and then go forward 40 frames. And I'm going to just have the cycle 1 full cycle. So I'll keyframe that at 1, which is 360 degrees. Grab both those keyframes, ease them. And now when I play this, we have that color offset effect going on in the background. And for the final effect for this layer, we're going to add a glow. For this glow effect, I'm going to increase the glow threshold to around 100%, increase the glow radius to 100 as well, and then increase the glow intensity to 3.6. And what that does is just make our background effect pop out a little more. Now when I play this, this is the effect that we have for our background layer. And then what we're going to do is create that same flash blur effect just like our other effect. So create a new adjustment layer, add a fastbox blur, keyframe the blur radius at 7 at the start, and then we're going to go forward 6 frames, keyframe the blur radius back to 0, add an exposure, keyframe the exposure at 2 at the start, and then the offset at 0.2, go forward 6 frames, and then keyframe both the exposure as well as the offset back to 0. Grab all those keyframes, ease them. I'm also just going to cut this adjustment layer to 6 frames long. Now when we play this, we have that flash blur effect going on at the start, and then what we're going to do is create that effect where we have our rotoscope effect happening, and then it cuts to a point where it just transitions into the regular clip without all the other effects. So what we're going to do is go forward 36 frames from the start and then grab the rotoscope layer, click Ctrl D, and we're going to cut that layer to where we're going to create that transition from the rotoscope effect to the regular footage. And then we're going to delete the rotobrush effect for that layer and then grab the 2 layers underneath it and just cut it to where the cut happens from the rotoscope effect to the regular footage. So now when I play this, we have that rotoscope effect going on and it just cuts to our regular footage. But to make it look better, we're going to also add that flash blur effect. So grab the adjustment layer, click Ctrl D, and then just drag that adjustment layer to where that cut happens. So now we have that flash blur effect as it cuts into the regular footage. And then in order to really wrap up this entire effect, we're going to create a new adjustment layer, add a transform. We're going to create a zoom out effect where it looks as if the camera zooms out at the start and then it zooms back to its original position once it cuts into the regular footage. So I'm going to turn off this flash blur effect for now and then increase the scale to around 300 and also just move the position so that it's pointed to the face of our subject. Keyframe both the position as well as the scale at the start. I'm going to move the Y position a little up so that we have our subject's face at the center and then go forward to where that cut happens and then keyframe the position back to its original position and then keyframe the scale at 100. Grab all those keyframes, ease them. We're going to then go into the graph editor of the position keyframes, and for this keyframe I'll have the influence at 100%. On this side I'll have the influence at 0.01 0.01%, so it animates really fast at the start and then it slows down once it reaches the end. And then we're going to create the same exact graph for the scale keyframes. So now when I play this, we have that zoom out effect going on at the start. Make sure to turn on the motion blur for this adjustment layer and then also turn on the other adjustment layer back on. Now when we play this is what we have for our final effect. Now moving on to the third and final effect, we're going to create a similar effect as our first effect, and I'm also just going to use the same clip from our first effect. So to get started, what we're going to do is rotoscope our layer, double click the layer, rotoscope your subject. After rotoscoping your subject, hit the freeze button. And then going back into the composition, we have our rotoscope subject. I'm going to increase the feather to around 13 and then decrease the shift edge to -51. We're going to then duplicate this layer, so click Ctrl D, bring that layer underneath. I'll rename that to Boat BG for background, and then delete the rotobrush effect for that layer. For this background layer, we're going to add a motion tile, increase both the output width as well as the output height to 200, click mirror edges. And the reason why we're adding this motion tile effect is because we're going to create a rotation animation for a background layer, so adding that motion tile effect fills in our entire composition. We're going to then add a displacer pro. I'll have the settings the same as our first effect, so I'll increase that anchor X to 35% and then increase the anchor Y to 50%. Keyframe the scale at 100% at the start, and then we're going to go forward 15 frames. Keyframe the scale to 120%, go forward another 15 frames, and keyframe the scale back to 100%. Grab those keyframes, ease them, go into the graph editor, and then for the influence, I'll have that at around 60% for all of them. Now when I play this is what we have. It animates in and then it animates out. For the next effect, we're going to add an optics compensation. Make sure to click reverse lens distortion and then keyframe the field of view at 0 at the start. Go forward 15 frames, keyframe the field of view to 120, and then go another 15 frames and keyframe it back to 0. Ease all of those keyframes, create the same exact graph. Now when I play this, we have that distort effect going on for our background. For the next effect, we're going to add a turbulent displace. Change the displacement to turbulent smoother. Increase the complexity to 6. And then keyframe the amount at 50 in the middle. And then go towards the start. Keyframe that amount to 0. Go to the end. And then keyframe the amount back to 0. Grab all those keyframes. Ease them. Go into the graph editor. Create the same exact graph. Now we have more of that liquid effect going on in our background. We're going to then add a glow. For this glow, I'll increase the threshold to 70% and then increase glow radius to 60. And we're also going to keyframe the glow intensity at 0 at the start. Go forward 15 frames, keyframe the glow intensity to 2, and then go forward another 15 frames, keyframe it back to 0. Grab those keyframes, ease them, go into the graph editor. You guys already know we're going to create the same exact graph. So now we have that background liquid effect, and then we're going to create a rotation animation. So keyframe the rotation at 0 at the start, and then go forward 30 frames, and then keyframe this to 1 so that it animates 1 full cycle. Grab both those keyframes, ease them, and for these keyframes, we'll also create the same exact graph. Now when I play this is what we have for our final effect. And for this effect, you can either have the motion blur either on or off. And in my case, I kind of like the way it looks when it's off. If you want to turn it on, you can do that as well. But this is the final look for our effect. And of course, for all these effects, you can always just modify the colors to go for whatever look that you want. But yeah, that is all I have for this video, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.